and I have had multiple discussions about data, and Rick has worked exceptionally hard to make sure that the data that's in the rec.gov is open and available. And what's super exciting to hear from Rick's perspective is what's happening with that data. And the more open you make your data, which is obviously an initiative of the current administration and hopefully future administrations, the more exciting things we can do with it. So.
And maybe just before we get started on that, let's also preface it. Rick is in an awkward position. I think most of us understand that the contract for Recreation.gov V2 has been held up by first a GAO appeal and now a Federal Court of Claims Act. And so he can't talk a lot about where we're going. But it's very important that this is a huge set of data. I'm reminded of that because about midnight last night, my phone went off, and it was Alyssa from Hip Camp who wanted to talk about the good use that she's put the data to, because she's been able to look at who actually goes camping at campsites in Recreation.gov in Texas and in Florida, and discovered there's an entirely different basis in terms of who does that. In Texas, it's 90% Texans who camp in Texas at federal recreation sites. Whereas in Florida, it's under 50%. And so all she's saying is, please share that in fact there is great opportunities to use what is already out there in data to understand more about how we're serving or not serving well the people who are going to recreation.gov. So Rick, we'll insulate you from any questions about what will happen in the next iteration of Recreation.gov, but it really is important for you to just share a little bit about what you do have, what you've released, and how we can better utilize that data.
Yeah, it's Alyssa copied me as well, and I think what that really illustrated to me was she made an actual business decision based on our data. She was looking at, her marketing budget is very small. She relies on word of mouth, and by targeting a local audience, such as she found in Texas, over the different audience in Florida, she made a choice to target the Texas market instead of Florida. So that was great. Recreation.gov has had an open database for many years. It's been rudimentary for up until the President's National Travel Tourism Strategy came out. And when we looked at what we could do in terms of providing recreation data, we started to make our database more robust, and we worked on adding an application programming interface to it so that people can interact with it more freely. In 2014, we released the API on that and hosted a hackathon. And in 48 hours, we had 12 different apps of people playing games on recreation data, encouraging kids to get outside. And this past spring, we started adding more data to it. So some of the data Margaret's referring to is some, and I think Ben might mention, is that we released all of our historical reservation data. That's what Alyssa used to make her decision. We've got the North Carolina State University is making heat maps on visitation based on that data. And this past spring, we attended a hackathon in San Francisco with Bay's Impact, which is a Gates Foundation group that tries to improve government services through the use of technology. And our team, the prompt that we put out there was, how do you get recreation data or information into the hands of underrepresented audiences, targeting a number of administration initiatives, agency initiatives to get kids out. And the winners, they basically built a Facebook chatbot that lets you talk to your phone and say, I want to go hiking. And it says, it showed you some places. And it says, how do you want to get there? Public transportation. They mashed it up with the Global Transportation Information System. And now suddenly you have, because we opened our data, people are playing with it. And the great things are happening because we've opened it. And the effort was really not huge, but I think that the results are significant. So that's just in a nutshell kind of what we're doing. We intend to continue doing that going forward as much as we can.
Here, here.
Yes?
Is there documentation of some of the specific examples of the application of that we could look at? I mean, the data, open data is one thing, but somebody using it to make a series of policy or business decisions, it'd be wonderful to see, I don't want to say case studies, but that would be wonderful to have. Are some examples there of where people have used it and, as you said, played with it?
Sure. So the applications that were built at our first hackathon, I can get you information on that, but that's posted on GitHub with the information about the repository and the API. And then, well, we've got just the anecdotal documentation that Alyssa sent in just last night. And then the other thing, this chatbot that I was just talking about, where they're actually presenting that at the White House Open Data Innovation Summit tomorrow at the Convention Center. And I believe some of that information is available online. I can show you some of the things they've done with it. Some of the companies that are involved, NIC is one, Booz Allen Hamilton, and Trailhead Labs. And I saw a demo on it which also highlighted some of the gaps. And one of the major gaps was that they pulled our federal recreation data, and they pulled some information from the Bay Area because they've done a lot of work there. And what they didn't have was then having state parks, because that was not part of the mashup. So, but it's a good example. I think it highlights the need for a consolidated approach to doing this, so that when we're giving people tools, we're not sending them just to national parks or just to national forests, but we're giving them the full range of experience. Yes, sir.
If you're looking at the economic impact on a community, what all are you measuring? Are you measuring the food they sell, the gasoline they sell, cars that may be sold? Maybe they're not. How do you know where they're buying cars from that community or buying some kind of vehicle from that community or some other community?
Yeah.
What proportion of that actually goes for the recreational purposes?
That, I'll leave up to Margaret.
Hold that question, because I think we're going to have some interesting discussions about economic impact. So he's the guy who's got really good data. That's what you need to know about.
That's why I was asking.
He's got data on supply and demand of recreation places and settings. That's what he's got. He also has an understanding of his data also incorporates, there's a piece of the expenditure because it's the expenditure for the campground or the permit or something like that. So again, his output could be an input, and you could geographically source his output to understand, but he doesn't have any vehicle stuff, but he has expenditures related to a place.
Right, and so he has direct data related to some type of recreational activity at a location.
Yes.
And very specifically, it's to those activities or facilities, federal facilities, that are reservable on recreation.gov. There are a lot of campsites and permits and tours that are not on recreation.gov that have no data on, because we don't process those transactions.
Yeah.
Now, the agency
There's
may have
no
some
cash
data.
transaction, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me also say that Rick has been very open to questions from us about where does recreation.gov. Let me just give you an example. One of the problems that many of us have is a special use permitting process that's separate from reserving a campsite. Let's say I am the president of a chapter of IMBA, and I decide I want to have a mountain bike ride over a weekend on a BLM Forest Service area in southwestern Colorado, and I want to reserve the group camping at a couple of those units, and I also want a permit to allow me to have sponsored rides on BLM and Forest Service trails. And so our question is, can recreation.gov eventually become that one stop where you could go as the organizer of an event like that to both reserve the group campsites and also apply for and get these special use permits? Right now, the time-consuming aspect for me as an organizer is hideous. I mean, it really is. And so what you end up doing is you have people who avoid the regulations. They just do it unsanctioned. And what we'd rather have is have something where we are aware of what's going on. So the point is, when I talked to Rick, Rick said, write that up, because that becomes then part of our list of things that we want to address as we evolve recreation.gov. So you probably have better examples of real-world issues that you would like to have recreation.gov factor in its design as it evolves. And I simply urge you to communicate with Rick and his team about how they can eventually be helpful to our applications.